You're not overwhelmed because life is hard. You're overwhelmed because you're trying to control what was never yours to control. You map your future. You demand guarantees. You brace for every twist life throws, trying to force certainty onto a world that refuses to be predictable. And this constant battle with the unknown, it's draining your energy, it's feeding your anxiety, it's costing you your peace of mind. But what if the path to real strength, to feeling lighter, isn't about tightening your grip? What if peace comes not from controlling life, but from accepting it? This isn't about giving up, it's about giving in to wisdom. The timeless wisdom of Stoicism. It teaches you how to reclaim control where it truly matters, within yourself. How to trade tension for calm, confusion for clarity, and finally, find freedom from the invisible weight of uncertainty. This isn't just theory. These are practical, grounded tools, tested by fire, to help you stay centered, even when life feels like chaos. And you're not alone in this struggle. Many men carry this same weight, quietly, endlessly. You don't have to anymore. Today you stand at a crossroads, fear or freedom, resistance or resilience. If you're ready to stop fighting uncertainty and start embracing it to build a stronger, calmer, more grounded life. Let's begin. And if this resonates with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone else who needs it. 1. Let go of control to find freedom. Think about the physical feeling of clenching your fists, grinding your teeth, and tensing your shoulders. Now imagine letting it all go. The release, the openness. That feeling isn't weakness. It's the doorway to a kind of freedom most men rarely allow themselves to feel. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that control equals strength. Real men tighten their grip, hold the line, and brace for impact. But what if that grip is what's actually breaking you? Life doesn't respond well to force. It flows. And the harder you try to hold it in place, like grabbing a rope that's pulling too fast, the more it burns you. You think if you just plan better, work harder, and stay alert, nothing bad will catch you off guard. But that mindset only leaves you more rigid, more anxious, and more exhausted. Eventually, you begin to realize that trying to micromanage the uncontrollable is like screaming into the wind, loud, draining, and ultimately useless. Stoicism offers a different way. It doesn't promise certainty. It doesn't give you control over life, but it gives you something better, control over yourself, the one place where power actually exists. Instead of tightening your grip, it invites you to loosen it. Instead of fighting the current, it teaches you how to float. Presence over perfection, flow over force. You stop resisting reality, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know what you can change and what you can't. Seneca once said, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." Life will move, with or without your permission. The only question is, will you move with it or be dragged by it? It's the difference between navigating your course with calm awareness or being yanked through every wave by fear. One gives you peace, the other robs it from you. You've probably felt this before. The deep relief that follows the moment you finally stop trying to control something that can't be changed. The job that didn't work out, the relationship that ended, the plan fell apart. At first, it feels like failure, but once the resistance fades, something surprising appears: clarity, a quiet kind of power. You stop asking, "Why did this happen?" and start asking, "What now?" That shift is everything. It's where freedom lives. Not in bending life to your will, but in choosing how to respond when it doesn't bend. Not in mastering outcomes, but in mastering your own mind when outcomes collapse. And that's where transformation begins. In the space between grasping and letting go, between anxiety and acceptance. The action is small. Sometimes it's a breath, sometimes it's a quiet nod to reality, but its effects are massive. Suddenly, your energy isn't wasted on fighting. It's focused, clear, ready for what matters most. So maybe real strength isn't what you were told. Maybe it doesn't come from holding on tighter. Maybe it begins the moment you stop. The moment you open your hand and let go. 2. Real strength is found in strategic surrender. We're taught that strength is about force, about imposing your will, pushing through, bending the world to match your blueprint. But what if the most powerful move isn't to push harder, but to know exactly when and what to yield to? Not from weakness, but from wisdom. Strategic surrender isn't about quitting. It's about adapting with purpose. Like the martial artist who uses an opponent's force to their own advantage, not by meeting strength with brute resistance, but by redirecting it with intention. Look around. The world rewards those who appear solid and unshakable. The oak tree stands tall, rigid, until the storm breaks it in half. The reed beside it, it bends. It yields. And when the wind passes, it's still standing. Men are taught to be oaks, but life doesn't care what you were taught. It will test you. And in those moments, flexibility isn't fragility, it's survival. Stoic philosophy was never about being passive, it's about being selective with your energy. It asks you, what are you fighting? And is the fight making you stronger or just tired? Strategic surrender means seeing the obstacle not as something to destroy, but as something to absorb and redirect. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Resistance can build muscle, but only when it's purposeful, not desperate. There's a shift that happens when you stop trying to bulldoze every challenge and start learning to pivot. Instead of draining yourself trying to force outcomes, you pause, you reassess, you breathe, and in that space, clarity returns. You begin to realize that strength isn't about being in control of everything. It's about being unshaken when you're not. You stop defining yourself by what you dominate and start defining yourself by how you respond when domination isn't an option. You've seen this in life. The man who loses his job and spirals because he can't accept it. The one who ends a relationship and spends months trying to undo the past. And then the rare few, the ones who, after the initial sting, exhale. They stop fighting what already is, and they begin again. Not from defeat, but from grounded resilience. They adapt. They create something new, and they walk forward, not heavier, but lighter. That's not giving up, that's power. Strategic surrender is a choice. It's what allows you to turn the energy wasted in resistance into energy you can invest in building what's next. The world may not give you guarantees, but it will give you moments. Moments to yield, moments to choose flexibility over force. And when you take those moments seriously, when you meet adversity, not with panic, but with presence, you start to discover a different kind of strength. One that doesn't crack under pressure, but breathes through it. So maybe strength isn't about holding the line at all costs. Maybe it's about knowing when to bend. Maybe that's where peace begins, not in the battle, but in the space after it, when you finally decide to yield on purpose. 3. Anxiety is the cost of fake certainty. The knot in your gut. The restless pacing at midnight. The racing thoughts that won't let you sleep. Anxiety often feels like a random attack, but what if it's not? What if it's a signal? A flashing warning light because you're demanding certainty, universe built on probabilities, not promises. You want guarantees where there are only variables. And your mind, in its desperate attempt to predict what cannot be predicted, turns on itself. It starts subtly, a what if before a big presentation, a what might go wrong before an important decision. You prepare, you rehearse, you try to control every possible outcome, but it's never enough. Because beneath the preparation, there's a deeper craving, the need to know for sure. And since life doesn't offer that kind of assurance, your nervous system stays on high alert, like a soldier in a war that never ends. Not because the battle is real, but because your mind can't accept uncertainty. Stoicism invites a different approach, not to eliminate anxiety, but to understand its roots. To realize that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our resistance to not knowing. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." How often do you find yourself paying an emotional premium for disasters that never arrive? It's like shelling out for insurance on things that can't be insured, like walking a tightrope and demanding solid ground underneath it. The tension doesn't come from the rope, it comes from your refusal to trust your balance. The Stoic doesn't eliminate risk. He acknowledges it, prepares for what's reasonable, and then lets go. He doesn't pretend to know the future. He meets it with presence. Anxiety fades, not because danger disappears, but because obsession with control dissolves. You prepare with intention, you act with clarity, and you release the rest, because beyond that, it's no longer your domain. You've likely experienced this shift before. You've spent nights consumed by all the ways something might go wrong, only to arrive at the moment and realize it wasn't so bad. The storm was mostly in your head. The silence after the event was never about relief. It was about recognition that your energy could have been used better. That clarity could have come sooner if you'd stopped demanding answers no one could give. The next time the spiral begins, try this. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what part of this is mine to act on, and what part am I just trying to control because I'm afraid? Then take one small grounded action. Not to fix the future, but to show up for the present. Write the outline, make the call, go for a walk, and once you've done your part, let it be. Anxiety loses its grip when you stop asking for certainty and start cultivating inner steadiness. It's not the perfection you need, it's perspective. You don't calm your mind by solving everything. You calm it by surrendering what was never yours to solve. That's not giving up. That's choosing peace over pressure. That's Stoic strength in action. 4 or 5 habits to stay grounded in uncertainty. Embracing uncertainty sounds powerful in theory, but how do you actually do it when the pressure's on and everything feels like it's coming apart? This isn't some lofty idea for peaceful afternoons. This is about building solid mental anchors that keep you steady when life storms in. Not once, not sometimes, but every day. Stoic philosophy isn't about waiting for life to slow down. It's about preparing yourself to move through it with stillness. And that kind of stillness doesn't appear by chance. It's trained. Just like physical strength comes from repetition, mental resilience is built through daily practice. Aristotle put it simply, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. Stoicism echoes the same truth. You don't rise in chaos by hoping for peace. You rise by becoming the kind of man who carries peace into chaos. That begins with learning to question your own certainties. Every time your mind says, I know how this will go, pause. Test it. Ask if that's fear speaking or clarity. The Stoics constantly examined their thoughts, not to be cynical but to stay clear. When you interrupt false certainty, you give space for objectivity to enter. Then there's journaling, not to vent but to understand. Marcus Aurelius did it every morning, not because he wanted to be a philosopher, but because he wanted to face the day with clarity. Writing helps you catch the thoughts that try to run the show from the shadows. It makes your mind visible. It makes your choices deliberate. Plans will fall apart. That's reality. The Stoic doesn't collapse when things change. He adapts. But adaptation isn't passive. It's intentional. When plans shift, don't panic. Recalibrate. Every pivot is a test of your flexibility, not your worth. Flow over force. That principle alone can save your mind from drowning in frustration. You're gonna make mistakes. Say the wrong thing. Miss a step. Trip over your own nerves. Laugh at it. Seriously, find the humor in your humanity. Stoicism doesn't demand perfection. It teaches self-command. And part of that command is knowing when not to take yourself so seriously. There's freedom in humility. The kind that says, I'm doing my best, and I'll try again tomorrow. And finally, stillness. Time away from the noise. No phone, no screens, just you and the quiet. The Stoics carved out solitude not as an escape, but as recalibration. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're giving space for everything inside to settle. Without it, the world fills your mind. With it, you reclaim your mind. These habits aren't glamorous, they don't trend. But they're the reason some men remain centered, while others collapse. They aren't about controlling life. They're about strengthening your posture within it. Because life won't slow down, uncertainty won't stop. But you can become the kind of man who meets it with calm, not by accident, but by design. Stoic habits don't make life easier. They make it easier to carry through life. And in a chaotic world, that's the kind of strength that actually lasts. 5. Change isn't the enemy. It's life itself. Look around you. Everything, from the cells in your body to the stars above, is in constant motion, constant transformation. Nothing stays still. Nothing lasts in the form you wish it would. Fighting change isn't just exhausting. It's like trying to resist gravity itself. It's a battle you can't win, and the longer you wage it, the more it drains you. But most men were never taught how to yield to change. They were taught to build strong foundations, secure structures, and stable plans. and then cling to them, as if life were a still lake, not a flowing river. But rivers don't pause because your schedule says so. They don't reroute themselves because you built a sandcastle in their path. You can stand there and curse the current, or you can learn how to move with it. Heraclitus, the Greek thinker who shaped much of Stoic thought, said it best. No man ever steps in the same river twice. Why? Because both the man and the river are already different. Change isn't the problem, it's your resistance to it. The fear of losing control. The illusion that stability is permanent. But what if real strength is learning to ride the wave, not build a wall against it? Stoicism reminds us that change is not the enemy, it's the nature of everything. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this often. He didn't write to stop change, but to accept it with grace, to let it teach him instead of tormenting him. That mindset is a skill, and like any skill, it starts with how you train your attention. You notice the resistance. You feel the tension in your chest when plans shift, when people leave, and when outcomes fail. You don't react blindly. You observe. You pause. You remind yourself, nothing was ever mine to keep, only mine to navigate. That shift, small as it is the foundation of resilience. Because when you no longer expect permanence, you stop feeling betrayed by life. Think of it like surfing. You don't control the waves, you can't calm the sea, but you can learn how to balance on the board. You fall, you rise, you adjust, and over time, you move with it. You stop fighting the water and start learning how to ride it. Life rewards that kind of mindset, not with guarantees, but with grace. Trying to build a life that never changes is like trying to construct a fortress on sand. It looks solid until the tide rises. But a mind trained to adapt, that's a fortress within. It doesn't need perfect ground. It builds a presence where others break. And that presence turns the chaos of change into a field of opportunity. You don't need to love change. You just need to stop fearing it. You need to stop seeing it as a failure and start treating it as a companion. Uninvited, yes, but full of lessons. The world won't stop moving, but you can stop resisting, and in doing so you begin to move with it, not as a victim of life, but as a participant in it. That shift isn't a theory, it's a practice. It's Stoicism in motion. 6. Learn to live with the unknown, that lingering discomfort when you don't have an answer. That quiet tension when the road ahead is fogged over. Most of us were trained to treat "I don't know" like weakness, as if not having certainty means not having strength. But what if making peace with not knowing is the real superpower? What if that moment, where you admit you can't see the whole path, is not where the journey ends, but where real freedom begins? We live in a culture obsessed with clarity, with fast answers, with 5-year plans and detailed life maps. But life rarely cooperates. It doesn't send memos. It changes, it withholds, it twists. And if you've tied your sense of security to having all the answers, then uncertainty will always feel like a threat. But if you learn to navigate by compass instead of GPS, to trust your principles, not fixed outcomes, then not knowing becomes less of a problem and more of an invitation. Stoicism draws a clear line between what we can judge and what we can't. You can know your intentions, your effort, your response, but you cannot know outcomes, control others, or predict the exact shape of tomorrow. Trying to do so will only exhaust you. But stepping back, acknowledging your limits without shame, that's where calm begins. That's where your mind stops spiraling and starts focusing on what's real. Think of it like exploring a new city without a rigid itinerary. You follow the streets, take wrong turns, discover things you didn't plan, and because of that, you're actually in the experience, not just checking boxes. Or imagine sailing by the stars. You don't demand a full map down to every wave. You adjust by what you can see and trust your bearings. Presence over perfection. That's not just a mantra, it's a mindset, a practice, a way of moving through life without freezing in the face of the unknown. Socrates once said, "I know that I know nothing." He wasn't being cynical, he was being honest. And that honesty made him open, curious, free from the pride that poisons learning. Einstein echoed the same humility. The important thing is to never stop questioning. These weren't men lost in doubt. They were men grounded in wonder, and wonder only exists where certainty lets go. So how do you live this? How do you face your own not knowing without letting fear take over? You pause before answering questions you're not ready to answer. You stop pretending to know what others are thinking. You stop demanding that the future declare itself early. You focus on the next step. You act with integrity in the fog, and you let the rest emerge in time. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be fearless. It asks you to be honest, to recognize that "I don't know" isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's the space where better thinking, better choices, and better peace can actually grow. In that space, something remarkable happens. The unknown stops being a void to fill and becomes a path to follow. Quiet, open, alive. 7. Peace comes from within, not from control. You can earn the title, make the money, follow the plan to perfection, and still lie awake at night with a quiet, gnawing unrest. Why? Because the control panel for real peace was never out there. It was never your career, your calendar, your achievements. It's deeper, quieter, hidden inside you, and often ignored. Most of us spend years trying to adjust to the world so we can finally feel calm. We fix, we plan, we tweak our surroundings. But inner stillness doesn't come from aligning the outside. It comes from mastering the frequency of your own mind. Like trying to silence a stormy sea by shouting at the waves, when what you really need is to anchor your boat and calm yourself within it. That's what Stoicism teaches. Not to eliminate the chaos, but to remain grounded while it rages. Not to find peace in perfect order, but in unwavering perspective. The world is unstable by nature. People change, plans collapse, outcomes defy expectations. And if your peace depends on those things holding steady, you've already lost. But when you stop seeking stillness in shifting things, something changes. You stop demanding control, you stop treating discomfort as a failure, and you begin to reclaim the only thing that was ever yours, your own response. Picture it like this. You're in a crowded room, voices everywhere. You can't silence the noise, but you can tune your own frequency. You can train your attention, decide what gets in, what stays out, what lands, and what simply passes through. That inner signal, that tuning, is everything. It's what lets one man stay calm in crisis while another spiral over inconvenience. It's not about strength as tension, its strength is clarity, strength as stillness. And it starts by shifting your definition of peace. Not as silence outside, but as a quiet you carry with you, no matter the volume around you. The Stoics never promised a life without chaos. They promised the tools to walk through it with calm. Marcus Aurelius wrote amidst war, politics, and disease, and still trained himself to return inward. Not to escape reality, but to realign with it. He knew that circumstances don't create peace, perspective does. That shift begins with small daily decisions. You catch your mind trying to control what it can't. You feel the surge of urgency, the need to fix everything, and you pause. You breathe. You turn inward. Ask, what's mine to control? Then you act, or you release. Either way, you remain still inside. You'll still feel waves. You'll still lose sleep some nights. But slowly, that feeling of being at the mercy of life fades. You become the steady part, the internal anchor. The man who doesn't need perfect conditions to be okay. Peace isn't a reward for achieving control. It's a skill you practice when control disappears. It's the calm you choose when things make no sense. It's the power to reset, not the world, but yourself. That's not theory. That's Stoicism. And in a restless world, that kind of peace is power. 8. Self-observation is the path to clarity. That inner drill sergeant barking orders in your head, the one that demands perfection, criticizes every mistake, magnifies every flaw. It's exhausting. You try to quiet it by working harder, getting sharper, and controlling more. But the noise only grows. What if the real healing, the real growth, begins the moment you finally allow yourself to just be human? We're taught to fix, to optimize, to perfect. But rarely are we taught to pause, to notice, to understand. Self-judgment is loud, self-observation is quiet, but it's in that quiet that clarity lives. Not the clarity of flawless logic, but the kind that comes when you stop pretending you have it all together and start being honest about where you're actually standing. Stoicism isn't about being untouchable. It's not about faking strength or suppressing emotion. It's about knowing yourself, your patterns, your impulses, your shadows, and facing them without flinching. The Stoics aimed for virtue, yes, but never from a place of perfection. They understood human fallibility. They didn't expect themselves to be unbreakable. They trained to be resilient. They didn't shame mistakes, they studied them. The mistake is not the problem, the refusal to learn from it is. And the only way to learn is to look, calmly, honestly, like a pilot checking his instruments after a turbulent flight. Not to punish, but to correct. Not to fear the data, but to trust what it reveals. You can't lead your life wisely if you keep flinching at your own reflection. That's where self-observation becomes a form of strength. It stops being indulgent and starts becoming strategic. You see your anger without justifying it, your fear without feeding it, your habits without denying them. You become the calm observer of your own experience instead of the prisoner of your reactions. It's not always comfortable. Sometimes you'll catch yourself acting from insecurity, from pride, from fear. But that discomfort is gold. It's the space between who you've been and who you're becoming. And growth only happens in that space, not in perfection, but in progress. You don't need to be flawless. You need to be aware. And awareness comes not from brutal inner monologues, but from measured, honest attention. Like Marcus Aurelius writing in the quiet of the morning, not to impress anyone, but to sort his thoughts, to strip away illusion, to face himself. So try this. At the end of the day, sit down, no screens, no noise. Ask, where was I reactive today? What did I avoid? What actually mattered? Not with shame, not with judgment, just clarity, just presence. You'll be surprised what comes up when you stop running and start listening. Let go of the fantasy of becoming perfect. Let go of the guilt that you're not already there. Look at yourself clearly and start from there. The goal isn't to become someone else. It's to become deeply familiar with who you already are and act from that place with wisdom. That's not a weakness, that's self-command. And in a world addicted to noise, silence like that is rare. It's stoic, it's powerful, and it's yours. Uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the environment in which we live, breathe, and become. And when you stop fighting it, when you stop demanding perfect answers from a world built on change, life doesn't get easier because it bends to you. It gets easier because you begin to bend with it. With awareness, with strength, with grace. We've explored what it means to let go of control. To practice strategic surrender, not as weakness, but as wisdom. We've looked into the cost of clinging to fake certainty and how anxiety feeds off our refusal to accept the unknown. You've learned the power of small daily habits, anchoring routines that train your mind to remain calm even when chaos surrounds you. You've discovered how change, far from being something to resist, is something to flow with. And perhaps most importantly, you've been reminded that peace and clarity do not come from the outside. They are forged within. The Stoic path is not about lofty ideals. It is about disciplined practice, about showing up to meet your own mind every day, with courage, with clarity, and with the willingness to act. Let this be your invitation to return to yourself, not to control the world, but to learn how to stand still while it moves. So take one insight from today and apply it. Write it, sit with it, use it, because small actions, repeated daily, are what reshape a life. Share your story in the comments below. What moment made you pause? What part of this message are you going to carry forward? Your practice begins the moment this video ends, and it begins not with the world, but with the way you choose to respond to it. Presence over perfection, flow over force, peace over pressure.